Hello, orthopods. Put down your crayons. Let's talk about the differences between diagnostic and therapeutic ultrasound. So, if you went through PT school, you had to take a class on modalities, and you probably memorized a whole bunch of stuff with the expectation that you would not really need to use it again. So, I would argue that this little block of instruction that CAPT requires us to learn gives us excellent insight into some of the nuts and bolts of how diagnostic ultrasound works. So let's dive in. First one is your therapeutic ultrasound. Its only purpose is to emit sound waves into the body. That's it, and that's all it does. It is a speaker. That is it. Your diagnostic ultrasound is both a speaker as well as a microphone. So it works much more like sonar, where it sends a pulse of energy out and then it listens, waits to hear the echoes, some magic happens, and then a picture appears on your screen. I don't know how the magic works, so God bless the people that figured it out. That is probably also the major reason which accounts for the difference in cost between the diagnostic and therapeutic ultrasound models. You can pick up a therapeutic ultrasound on cheap because a lot of places get rid of them fairly often because no one uses them. And then the diagnostic models are coming down in price. Don't get me wrong, they're much cheaper than they used to be, but they can still go from mild to wild in the thousands of dollars. Alright, so next up, duty cycle. That term you heard about when you were studying in PT school and never thought about again. So your duty cycle is essentially, if I remember correctly, the percentage of time that the transducer is emitting sonic energy. So you can put it at 50%, which means that half the time it's on, half the time it's off. And these are usually measured in very, very small slices of time, like milliseconds, microseconds. So for therapeutic ultrasound, this has to be much, much higher because we're trying to get energy into the body. So you can have the duty cycle at 100%, meaning it's always emitting sound, it's always vibrating, and then you can back it off down to 25% or whatever. I haven't looked at it recently. For diagnostic ultrasound, basically it's only emitting sound 1% of the time. So in terms of the total energy that's transmitted, it is much, much lower because once again it has to send out that sound burst and then it has to listen for the reflection. So it can't be on too much. So those are big differences. Next up is the frequency. Is most of the models and most of what I was taught for therapeutic ultrasound, you're either looking at 1 megahertz or 3 megahertz. That's it. Most of the diagnostic models will have transducers which range anywhere from 5 megahertz, and then some of the new fancy expensive ones go up to 20 megahertz. So the biggest difference for this in particular is the visualization of the tissue amongst the frequencies. So just like when you were learning about therapeutic ultrasound, the lower the frequency, the further into the body it goes. So the more superficial something is, the higher the frequency you want, because that'll get more energy into the superficial stuff. And then the deeper you want to go, the lower frequency you want, because lower frequencies bend around stuff more. Higher frequencies tend to bounce off. So if you're trying to transmit energy, you want the higher frequencies. And the last one is the probe slash transducers. So for diagnostic, you usually either have a linear or a curvilinear, which is much more like a rectangle that's in contact with the patient. And this is what gives us our nice picture on screen. For your therapeutic, it's always that like little big circle doohickey. That comes, I think, in a couple different sizes depending on how big you want it to be. So it doesn't create a very good window, but that's an easy way to look at it and say, is this therapeutic or diagnostic, in case you didn't know, based on the machine it was hooked up to. And once again, the therapeutic ultrasound transducers are so much cheaper is because they don't have to have any of that microphone technology. They don't have to be able to hear the sound waves that are being reflected from the energy they're putting into the body. So those are some of the big differences, just kind of from a standpoint of what we get to learn in PT school, and then kind of bring over some of that knowledge base into the diagnostic realm.